Um, Hello, and let me zoom out just a little bit here. Okay. Um, yeah, a lot to talk about. I don't have a special guest tonight. As I've noted before, that is not a hard requirement. I hope to have one next time, but um, that could be you. You know, it doesn't have to be somebody you've heard of. It could be you. Well, you've heard of yourself, of course, but um, anyone come on the show who wants to have an earnest conversation about the kind of topics we address, which are primarily UFO investigation, UFOs. We try to steer away from the speculative side, from the theorizing, the amateur theorizing. Theories should be taken seriously. Or you can go to reportaufo.org and click on the Contact Us tab and type away. You can also email report a UFO at protonmail.com. We'd be happy to get in touch with you if you email us there. Also, API case files at gmail.com. We still use that email address from time to time, and we check it fairly regularly. So anyway, tonight I wanted to talk about a few things. I was going to discuss some stuff about field investigation gear. I think I may postpone that to time when I'm better prepared. This was a busy week. My son, my youngest child, is starting at the University of Maryland in a couple of weeks, and we had to go to a parent orientation. That led to some discussion, although it's going well. He's a bright kid. He'll do well. I'm not worried about him too much. His social life seems to be, and you think, well, and then when you have a baby, you think, well, when they're 2 or 3 years old, it'll be a lot easier than this. And then they're 2 or 3 years old, and it's not much easier. And then you say, well, when they get a little older, and there is kind of a sweet spot when they're 8 or 9, 10, they haven't discovered their genitalia yet, and they still are kind of innocent, and they can do all kinds of things for themselves. And there is a bit of a more even peripherally related. Jump in the chat. I'd be happy to discuss it with you right here live. If we get a chance, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that interest me quite a lot, but I'm going to have to bring up some text. It's just text. I'm not no images. Oh. What's that about? Okay, let's see. Oh, well, that's interesting. A lot of things got reset apparently while I was away from the keyboard. One more thing to look at here, folks. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, you'll note that our URL is aerial-phenomenon. I know that's a bit painful to spell correctly. I apologize. It wasn't my idea. If it were up to me, it'd be aerial-phenomena, or even just phenomena or something like that. Something easy to remember. That's why I bought the domain name reportaufo.org. So I'm inviting you to go to reportaufo.org, click on home, and then you'll have our, what is a blog style website. There are a couple things that I want to bring up here. We make several entries a month. I would say about one a week, thereabouts. Sometimes it's many times a week, depends on what's going on. Anytime we close a case, I usually try to make a note of it on the blog. And what I'm looking for here is a transcript. Now, lately I've been publishing occasional transcripts. These are interview transcripts with the witnesses. The advantage of this is we don't have to use their voices, which could be used to identify them. And like I've said many times, we don't want our witnesses to be identified unless they have expressed a willingness to be identified. So this is a blog post of ours called Transcript of Interview with Witness 1 in Case 14-035, Wisconsin. This is actually a transcript of interview. This points to transcripts with both Witness 1 and Witness 2. Witness 1 is a gentleman who lives in Wisconsin, formerly Minnesota, and Witness 2 is his spouse, and he is a contractor, and she is a nurse. I don't know if she may have retired by this point. They have adult children who no longer live with them. During the events described, they had a daughter who did live with them at the time. I have not been in contact with her at any point. I asked them, could you put me in contact with her, or ask her to come and get in contact with me? And they were adamant that she would be unwilling to do that, and we're not going to ask her. Therefore, I don't have any testimony from her. What I do have is from them. And it's fascinating stuff, even if you don't believe it. Because it really, it's the whole UFO mythos in one family's experience. There are flying saucers, there are flying triangles, there are men in black, there are shady federal agents following them around, there are beams of light coming out of the sky, and lots of other things. I very nearly asked them if it would be all right if I come up there and visit them and try to track down some of the evidence for their experiences. But for reasons that may become clear, I chose not to do that. And now I think it's too late. Now, Witness 1 still, as far as I know, is quite enthusiastic about his experiences being the result of extraterrestrial visitation and wants to make that public. But of course, I'm not going to be the one that makes their identities public. Witness 2 is much more reticent, feels that this was a result of some kind of supernatural evil that came to visit them, and she is glad that it is no longer part of their lives. I think those of you who have investigated these things before will know that that's pretty typical division of experience. Some people are enthusiastic about it, and some people hate it and want it to be gone. I have the transcripts here, and they're on our website, and you can read them. I've redacted them considerably so that no one can figure out where they were or who they are. I hope I did that well. I'm going to bring up one of them, and I'm going to kind of go over it with you, and you can follow along on our website. As I said, the name of the blog entry is Transcript of Interview with Witness 1 in Case 14-035. If you just go into the search block and just type 14-035, it'll come up. And so Witness 1, that the husband, I called him up, and we discussed his experiences, and I wanted to start from the beginning and go jumping around to different things that he'd experienced. I told him I wanted to proceed systematically. He didn't agree with that. I wanted to put a timeline together. He wasn't so sure about that. Anyway, so finally I just said, okay, go ahead and just start telling me things in approximately the order you remember them, and I'll try not to interrupt you too much. And he said, okay, sure. Well, before I moved out here to Wisconsin, we moved here in 2004. We lived in Isanti, Minnesota, which is a smaller town just north of Minneapolis. Okay, anyway, I went to see a friend of mine. He worked up in Two Harbors up on Lake Superior and worked for the garbage company. So he worked till noon on Fridays, and he had the rest of the day off. And I called him on Thursday at night and said, hey, I'll buzz up tonight and we'll hang out. Hang out by myself? He said, I'll hang out. Just kind of go at night, and when you get home at noon, we'll hook up and I'll spend a weekend together. Anyway, so I took off. He said, yeah, that's fine. So I took off from where I lived. It was 2.5 hours exactly from my door to his door in Two Harbors. The car was full of gas. I didn't have to stop. And it was Thursday night. And I got maybe an hour and a half into the trip, and I was up around Moose Lake, Minnesota. And I see this, what I thought it looked like a tow truck or a highway helper or something on the side of the road, way up in the distance. And Thursday night, like I say, on 35 up in that area, you're about the only thing on the road. And as I got closer, I could see the distance wasn't even on the ground. It was like past it's a 4-lane highway. It's up past that fence and maybe like 200 feet in the air. And I thought, what in the heck is that? This thing had it was a black triangle, and it had on the 3 corners of it, it was alternating red, blue, green, and blue, green, like it was spinning around, like alternating. And the belly of it, it had a larger half globe looking thing hanging there. And that looked like the mother of pearl mixing, like you could see through it. I got it out of the car, and I'm leaning at the car on the shoulder, and I'm leaning on the roof of the car, watching this thing. And I'm watching, and I'm thinking, what in the heck is this thing, you know? No sound, no nothing. For what I thought I was I suppose, maybe between 3 and 5 minutes. I watched this thing, and then all of a sudden, it just kind of zipped, like they put it in reverse, and they just backed away from me and just disappeared. So I got a little bit of a cold. Anyway, I get in the car, I get up to the Two Harbors, and I'm banging on the door, and he's like, finally comes to the door. He says, "Where have you been? Do you know what time it is?" He says, "You should have been here at like 12:30. I says, "Well, it can't be that late." I said, "I didn't stop for gas or nothing, you know. I drove right straight up here." I said, "Man, I stopped for a few minutes, watched this weird thing over the swamp." He says, "Man, it's 2:30, 2:45. I'm like, okay, that's kind of strange, you know? So I drew him a picture of this thing. He thought I was out of my mind anyway. I kind of forgot about it that weekend. I went home, drew a picture of it for my wife. She put the picture in her jewelry box, and I'm telling her the story about it. She thought, okay, that's kind of weird. Okay, so that's the first story that involves an encounter with a black triangle. With the colors of the lights on the corners differ from encounter to encounter, but what we often hear about is this half globe in the middle. He described it as mother of pearl. And there was about 2 hours of missing time. I don't think 2 hours of missing time is that weird. That could be just poor timing, or not understanding what time it is, or it takes longer to get there than you think. But because he was driving pretty far, I have not verified the time required to get from there to there. But I think he knew his way around the area. Been there his whole life. Later on, this couple moved to a new home in Wisconsin, that had been under construction, but it needed a lot of work. Apparently, the construction job was not very good. I don't have all the details of that, but so they were up there frequently. And it's a few miles outside of a small town in Wisconsin. There they had many encounters, and I'll let you read the rest of it. It's a litany of the usual sorts of things that we remember from the 80s and 90s. And it's quite interesting. Again, this is case 14035. This is typical in many cases like this. Although we have the husband and wife do corroborate each other quite well. Not in every event, because she wasn't there for all of them, but the events are strange. One of them was an added time event, not a missing time, but when both of them experienced several hours sort of being added to their day. I'll let you read that for yourself. Nothing unusual happened other than that, but they both went through activities that should have taken several hours, and when they were done, it hadn't taken much time at all. And they both, at the same time, experienced this. Again, there are some possible explanations, perhaps. I don't know what they are. If you have some ideas, let me know. If you read through this transcript and you have some ideas about what happened, let me know. I also have some photographs they took of what they think was a federal agent who was following them. They got a pretty good photo of the guy in his black Chevy Suburban. Again, this was 2004, 2005, somewhere in that time frame. There were other things that happened at that house with their young daughter present. Again, the daughter is now an adult. If you're the daughter, please get in touch. I'd love to get your side of the story. But every time I tried to get corroboration, not only was I frustrated by not being able to find anybody, but they themselves kind of cut me off. They did not want to give me the name of a person who could corroborate. And these are including a lot of minor strange events as well as some major ones. And that would include their daughter, by the way. They did not want me to talk to her. That was clear enough. Now, that could be understandable, that they just felt they should shield her from that sort of thing. I have not been in touch with them much at all since I did this interview. And I went around trying to find some corroboration. I could not find it. I could not find newspaper stories. I could not find anything. He did contact a filmmaker, or a filmmaker contacted him, and that filmmaker was going to make a film about his experiences. I don't think that ever happened. You know how it is. That sort of thing requires somebody to pony up some funds, and I suppose no one did. So anyway, it was fascinating nevertheless. It did change my perspective on these cases, even though I could not prove to a skeptic that any of this actually happened. And I would not blame you for thinking, oh, well, it didn't happen. They're just making it up. If you speak to witness 2, she's very much salt of the earth sort of person, responsible person, a mother, a person who has a responsible job. And I didn't get the impression she would make something like this up, even to support her husband's story. Now, going against this was that during the entire time that I was interviewing witness 2, witness 1 was present, and he did some kibitzing in the background. I wish he hadn't done that. I wish he'd but I had no control of the situation. I was happy that I could talk to her. So what do we conclude from something like that? Well, you don't conclude a whole lot. And as we've discussed before, firm conclusions in this business are very rare. And I don't have one. I do not have one. But it did lead me to think that when you do have someone who describes high strangeness experiences like this couple, and there were many that they described, then just summary dismissal is not the right response. You need to follow up as best you can. You will probably fail to get corroboration, but you have to try. That's what we do. And someday, maybe I'll hit one of these cases and there will either be corroboration or there'll be somebody who can show me that it's all made up. We certainly can't say that based upon this that there's extraterrestrial visitation. We certainly can't say based on this that there is supernatural evil lurking in Wisconsin. None of that is remotely the case. There's no evidence for that. What we do have is evidence that these very ordinary couple of people who just like to go fishing and hang out, and go hunting and fishing, and they wanted to raise their family and be left alone, have some very strange experiences that they both remember. That much I will assert. Did they misinterpret their experiences? Possibly. It certainly does seem that witness one was a little overly sensitive to anything that was even mildly anomalous. But some people have very sensitive anomaly detectors, even overly sensitive anomaly detectors. I think I may be one of those people. I have at times gone off thinking that what I just experienced was anomalous, and it took me a fair bit of investigation to reach the conclusion that maybe not. Maybe it wasn't. That's not true in every case, but quite a few times. For example, I did photograph something flying across my field of view in more or less a straight line, what I thought was high speed. And after a lot of thinking about it and looking at the photographs carefully, I concluded it was a bird. I didn't think birds flew like that, but then after some more observation, I realized sometimes birds just do fly in straight lines. Not often. Excuse me. I have to address something. That's what you get from live shows. Okay, well, never mind. Nothing important. So I think I'll conclude that there. If you want to know more about this case, please follow up. I'll put a link in the description after the show. You can learn more about it. And if you have any insights or any additional information, please get in touch. No, we do formally close cases, but really no case is ever closed. If there's more information that's better or useful, or however we want to describe that. And if we got a case wrong, we'll say we got a case wrong. One thing I've noted about some researchers is they get so committed to a case, a particular interpretation of a case, that they cannot say, okay, well, we got it wrong, sorry. They have to always double down. That is very unfortunate. No matter what the case is, or how much research you did, or how much evidence you think you have in favor of your conclusion, you have to be willing to say, no, I guess I got it wrong. Something else came up and I got it wrong. What we see often, researchers getting things wrong, is when they take witness accounts too literally, especially witness estimates of altitude and speed and distance. And they say, well, look, how is that even possible? How could that thing be a mile wide? Well, maybe it's not a mile wide. Maybe it's much smaller than that. Maybe it's bigger than that. You don't know. You always have, and if you ask a witness quite often, how do you know it was that big, or how do you know it was that far away, or how do you know it was that moving that fast, or that altitude, you will not get a satisfactory answer. You may even get hostility. And when you know that the reality is that they don't know, they don't have an accurate estimate. I had one witness tell me that the object he was seeing was about a mile away. He was sure of that. And after a little bit of investigation, didn't take a whole lot, it was pretty clear what he was seeing was the planet Venus, which was slightly more than a mile away. And not the only case I've seen of Venus misidentified. And that kind of thing, that's just the nature of the beast. Now, what I would propose, what I would hope we could all agree on, is that no matter what it is, no matter how much research you've done, if the evidence is against you, you have to say, yes, it is, or at least it cast doubt on your conclusion, say it cast doubt. And don't be dogmatic about it. The last thing we need in this field is dogma. Well, maybe that's not the last thing. The next to last thing we need is dogma. The last thing we need is idle speculation. Okay. Theories, everyone thinks theories are just whatever you come up with when you've maybe had a glass of wine and you sit back and think about something. That's not a theory. A theory is a big deal. A theory is serious business. If you're going to theorize, you better have a lot of information that you really can lean on, and you better spend a lot of time putting that theory together. Theories are tough. If you think you have a theory, well, that's the vernacular use of the word theory, which usually means, how do I describe it? It means, like a fan theory of how a TV show should end, or what happened to a particular character. It's just conjecture, and in fact, there's nothing. Like if you're watching a bit of fiction, and something happens, and you have a theory about it. Well, all that happened was one of the writers for the show decided to put that down on paper. That's all. I mean, there's no reality behind it or after it. It's just what they decided to put on the script. So, that if that's what you mean by theory, sorry, that's not what we're really talking about. A scientific theory is a big deal, which is why some people have said, and I agree, that theorizing about UFOs is premature. We don't have enough solid information, and we've not done the basic work that's needed to establish any theory. We've talked before about the extraterrestrial hypothesis, how it's not even a hypothesis. Do I have a gut feeling that extraterrestrial forces are involved? Yeah, I do. I really do. I have this kind of intuitive sense of that. Can I prove that to anyone? No. Understanding or whatever the skeptical position is, I can't show that they're wrong. I can show to my own satisfaction that they are probably mistaken, but about a particular case. But what does that case implies, I cannot tell you. And that this next case is something that I'm going to show you that I think is exactly right. I've gotten explanations of it that I am convinced are mistaken. I don't have my own explanation to offer. I consider it unexplained, unidentified. I have not yet written up the report, which I regret, for several reasons. First of all, this is one of the best witnesses we've ever had. He's a really good witness. There were two people present, but unfortunately his wife did not see the object. She was just seated at the wrong position, and she was blocked by trees. This happened in the summer. There was a lot of vegetation. They were outside on it was a very clear night, and they were outside to observe a comet that was a naked eye comet that was visible at the time. So anyway, this is a case 20-030. I'm going to ask you to bear with me because I'm going to bring up some stuff. And the stuff is DaVinci Resolve. And I don't know if you're familiar with that software. I'm going to hopefully be able to bring it up without incident. I have DaVinci Resolve Studio, but the free version would be completely fine for this. Let's see. API cases. Okay. I'm going to bring this in to where you can see it on the live stream. So let me do that. This is, I apologize, it's taking me a little time. Okay. This is going well. Let's see how that looks here. Okay. Oh, I think I may have grabbed the wrong window. Maybe not. Let's go to the timeline view. Okay, what I want to show you the video clip from the Psionics Aurora, which is a kind of an infrared camera. You know what? Let's boy, that's really large. Okay. There we go. This is a, I apologize, it's taking so long. You'll be able to see, I think it'll be worth it once we get this guy captured. Oh, come on. Work with me on this. I'll crop that. Oh. Okay, yeah, that's better. And you don't really need to see me that much. I'll just... All right. Now we're getting there. All right. Now let's go have a look at this. All right. Can you see that? I think you can. That's we'll do a little better here. Now the colors you're seeing are nothing of any significance. The Cyanix aurora is not a not meant to produce as a record, not to record actual colors, and you can see a lot of noise. Let me start this and you just watch it. Now notice there's some annotations here. Those the azimuth and elevation, that's all my annotation. And so let's just go. There's something behind the tree there, and that comes out behind the tree, and boy, is it bright. It's just blindingly bright. I've labeled some stars that are visible. Now, notice it's kind of getting dimmer. Let me, before we get any misconceptions here, there are a lot of lens flares in this image. I'll run this back a little bit so you can see this thing here, and that. I'm pretty well convinced those are lens flares, which are reflections internal in the camera. This is not an expensive high-end night vision camera. This is look at that. Look at all those lens flares. They're all over the place. The bright thing in the center, there's also spikes, which I don't think those are diffraction spikes, which they're just glare. There's a lot of glare here. Ignore that. Ignore the glare. So it's behind the tree. It comes out, and like I said, it's summer, so the tree's, you're thinking right there, it comes out from behind the tree. And boy, is it bright. And then it moves across the field of view. And you notice it's getting dimmer. And there's still a lens flare there. It's getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. But it's still pretty bright. And then it just moves across, and eventually he stops shooting it, and that's the end. The total length of this thing is over a minute. I'm fast forwarding, scrubbing through it for you. It's moving in a pretty straightforward way. It's not maneuvering at all, as far as I can tell. I don't see any evidence that it's doing that. It's just moving across the sky at what speed? Hard to tell because you don't know how far away it is. If it's low to the ground, it's not very fast. Now, our witness is a drone pilot. He's also, well familiar with aviation. In this particular area, there's not a major airport. There's a lot of smaller airports, as there are pretty much anywhere in the United States. This is in Ohio. Of course, there are major airports in Ohio, but this is fairly far from Columbus, and other large cities like Cleveland. You see it there? It's going across and getting slowly dimmer. My hypothesis for why it's getting dimmer is that it's getting further away. But you notice it doesn't seem to abruptly change brightness at any point. It just gets gradually dimmer, as if the light that's coming off of it is coming off pretty much equally in all directions, or at least in the directions that we're seeing it from. And yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? And now, one of the most common things here's some of those common things I've heard. One is landing light. And no, immediately it's not a landing light. Why? I've seen thousands of landing lights, maybe tens of thousands. Now, ignore the color, because the color is not relevant. That purple was described by the witness as more of like a bluish white, which is okay. The purple is just, the Cyanix Aurora is not designed to render accurate colors. It's mainly for hunting. It's an infrared scope, so the colors are not correct. So it's bluish. It's a bluish white. So that would not be inconsistent with the landing light. But what is inconsistent with landing light? Direction changes just a little bit. You begin to see that it's not a single bright light, but multiple bright lights, running lights and navigation lights, strobes, and so on. No evidence of strobes or any other type of lights here. It's just one constant bright light. So yeah, landing light to me was eliminated immediately. Drone, well, if it's a drone, it's maintaining a very bright light on the observer very consistently over the entire minute or minute plus of this video. And I should point out that the witness first saw it and hadn't started filming it when it was very nearly on the horizon and off to his right, and long before it got anywhere near the height of this tree. So I don't believe it was a drone or a helicopter. For his helicopter, it would be quite low and quite loud, and keeping its spotlight on the witness the whole time. Someone said they heard a helicopter here, and well, I've listened to the audio many times. I don't hear a helicopter. If you don't agree, I'd be happy to provide to you the same file that the witness supplied to me, and you can listen for a helicopter if you want to. Now, here's the more interesting hypothesis that I think is rejected, but it's not so easily, which is that it's a atmosphere skimming fireball. That is a natural object that is like a small asteroid or comet that is skimming the Earth's atmosphere and comes in, creates a fireball, and then exits the atmosphere. What we see there is nothing like the profile of that. Now, there have been fireballs recorded that persisted for about that length of time. There was a great fireball in the 1970s that was filmed by many people. It was a daylight fireball, and it lasted for quite a long time. And it was seen in the Western U.S. and Canada, and photographed and filmed by a number of people and witnessed by a number of people. If you look at the AMS website, that is a website that does their best to track fireball events in the United States and elsewhere, pretty much everywhere in the world. But in Europe and the US, there are a lot of amateur meteor observers. And on a clear summer night, like you have here, there's going to be a lot of them out. And they will see fireballs consistently. They're not making this up. Typically, more than a dozen people will, if there's a fireball that lasts for more than a couple of seconds, you'll see dozens, even many people. For a fireball that is long lasting like this one, you can get over 100, even over 200 people. In Europe recently, there was a big atmosphere skimming fireball that was seen by a lot of people in Europe, and I'll have some documentation of that in my report. This is all well documented, and people get videos, and people get photos, and people make note of the direction and the timing, and some of the observers are very experienced, and as a result, the researchers are often able to reconstruct the trajectory to reasonable accuracy and determine what the source of the fireball was in some cases. It's a pretty sophisticated system that's out there. And so I figured, well, I should be able to go onto the AMS website and find lots of other people who saw this thing that persisted for more than a minute and showed no signs of breaking up, no smoke trail. That's another story. And it was extremely bright. So it would have been seen by lots of people who are out there that night just to see that comet. And no, nobody. It didn't show up. There was another fireball that night, later that night, or perhaps earlier, I can't remember. But there was another fireball that was seen. It persisted for a few seconds, but it was not in the right direction or in the right location. So you would expect a lot of people have seen this thing was heading more or less to the east, as I've been able to determine from talking to the witness and from looking at the stars in the background. I can determine pretty well what direction it was in. I've been talking about this case for some years now, and I have not seen a good explanation yet. And I'm almost done with the analysis. What I want to do here, you can see how big this thing is when it's not really big. That's not its size, I don't believe. This is what I would hypothesize is a point spread function. That is, it's a bright pinprick of light that is fairly close, and so it's a small source, and then as it gets further away, it gets dimmer because it's further away. And that is due to the fact that of its distance. And so the next thing I want to do is try to sort of measure the rough size of this ball of light, not this bit out here, this glare, which I don't trust because it's, the camera's not great, the optics aren't great, but just this bit in the center here. And as it progresses along, it's just kind of try to estimate its size. And then the size should be proportional to the brightness, and the brightness should be inversely proportional to the square of the distance. So from that, I should be able to roughly estimate the relative distance. I can't tell you what the absolute distance was. We can constrain it a little bit. And so it looks to me like when it was up here, just coming out past the tree, we know it was about 50 degrees in elevation angle. We know that because this star up here, 17 Aquila, is at 55 degrees. And that's pretty high in the sky. And in fact, our witness took his drone and he flew it up to near the top of the tree and measured the height of the tree. So we have that. I think it was about 60 feet. We have that information, and we know pretty closely where he was standing with respect to the tree. So that's all consistent with it being a roughly 45, 50 degrees elevation angle when it came out from behind the tree. And as you can see, as it goes down here, its elevation angle is decreasing quite a bit. Oh, by the way, I should point out this right here, this flash. Here, can I find the flash? There's what appears to be a flash of light. That we think is headlights from a car nearby. Both the witness and I think that's a very plausible explanation. So I'm almost to the point where I'm ready to publish that. I just want to finish that analysis. Great witness, great video. It is noisy, as you can see, but this is so bright that it overwhelms the noise. And I'm very excited about this case because I don't think we have an explanation. It's a true unidentified. I don't have any more questions from the chat. So just a couple more remarks, and I think I will call it a night. If you also, I will take questions on email. If you want to send email to reportaufo@protonmail.com. In terms of special guests for next time, I have not asked this person yet, so I won't announce it, but hopefully that will be somebody, and we'll have a good discussion. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is has to do with my ongoing work on doing field investigation and helping other investigators prepare for that. And I don't think I was going to discuss today a couple of things about how to prepare your equipment for going into the field. As you know, I always advocate not taking too much stuff into the field, but making sure you do have enough. uh, and thinking through that carefully before you go. And one thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't have it with here handy here, but it was the use of magnetic compasses. I think they're still quite useful. In this day and age when we have Google Earth, magnetic compasses may seem a little bit quaint, but actually I think they're really powerful, important tools when you arrive at an unfamiliar place and people start pointing in various directions. Having the compass is useful. The compass is also a crude magnetometer. Now, for magnetometers, I do want, and I haven't done this yet, is build a small magnetometer. Not really a science-grade instrument, but just a basic 3-axis magnetometer. You can buy all the parts you need really very inexpensively now. You can use a, you can get 3-axis magnetometers because they're available for cell phone use. Many cell phones, maybe all of them now these days, have a little compass in them, have a little magnetometer. And it's a 3-axis magnetometer, and they're actually remarkably good considering how cheap and small they are. I'm quite interested in determining if we can detect magnetic anomalies when UFOs show up. I don't think there's good data on that. Primarily for the reason that nobody knows when UFOs are going to show up, and they don't seem to have a magnetometer ready when it does. In fact, I don't think there's any really good cases of people who know the UFO is going to show up and are ready and there when it does. They have a way of being surprising and not showing up when they're expected. In fact, that's pretty much to me a yellow flag when someone says they can summon them or know when they're going to be there. That spikes my skepticism highly, and I always say, well, great, we finally have repeatable evidence. When can I be there with my camera? And the answer is, well, I don't know. Whatever you do, don't bring anything that can see a long way away, because, it might expose us as frauds. So, and there are a lot of frauds, as you probably are aware. One of the things that's very discouraging in this field, very disheartening, is all the grift, all the fraud, all the nonsense. Some of it is ordinary noise. Some of it may be sophisticated noise. Mostly, I'm afraid it's ordinary noise. Anyway, no questions. I would be happy to field any. Let's see. Chat. Nothing in the chat. Okay. So I think we'll stop there. It was nice talking to you. I hope you got something out of this. And I'll be back in a couple of weeks, most likely. Now there's stuff happening in real life that might interfere with that. But I think I should be able to do it. So, we'll see you then. Okay. Bye-bye.